this computer. There she is. Okay,
And
episode
there it is. Nobody
20.
knows what you're talking about when you say there she is.
When I say there she is, it's the lady with the
The lady.
seductive
Sure,
tone
Dawn.
voice who says, recording in progress. So this is episode 24. This is on grief and loss. Who knows? We might extend this into 2 episodes like we do everything else. But so
Right.
we exhausted sex. I
Did
was
we though?
exhausted. I was exhausted. I was
Do you
exhausted.
ever, or
I
does
mean,
it
no,
exhaust you? That's it.
no. So this is grief and loss. And like I said to you, I wanted to start with a quote that I
Okay.
saw a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
Now, have you ever heard of Glennon Doyle?
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Right. Okay. She wrote Love Warrior,
Hmm.
which was pretty big a couple years ago. And she's had a pretty traumatic life with like sexual assault, addiction.
Yeah, I know some
She's,
of her stuff when I've heard her speak, but I haven't read her book yet.
yeah, I did read Love Warrior. It was years ago. I loaned it to somebody and never got it back, but I'm okay with that. Like I want my books to go out into
Passing
the
it
world.
on. Yeah.
I don't need them back. Then I just have to pack them up or donate them. So anyway, she has this quote and it's from Love Warrior. And I saw it I don't remember it from the book, but I saw it somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
It's a really great quote, I think, about grief.
Okay.
So it's also kind of emotional.
Okay.
So you know me. Probably gonna tear up, folks. I do have a heart. I'm not this cold, unfeeling asshole.
No, we know
So
the mushy. Go ahead. Yeah.
oh, so mushy. And so it is grief is love's souvenir. It's
Yep. I
our
know that.
proof that we once loved. Grief is the receipt we wave in the air that says to the world, look, love was once mine.
Hmm.
I loved well. Here's my proof that I paid the price.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that can really be associated with anything. Now, when I think about it, I think about my
Yep.
dad
Yeah.
because that's the so far in my life. I mean, grandparents, yes, whatever. But
Yes.
my
Different.
dad passing was my biggest, you know,
Yeah.
one of the biggest moments of my life. And I'll say this too, because I told you I wanted to tell a funny story, but like I also will say that when my dad passed away and we got the call at 4:30 in the morning that he had passed and he had been in a facility because he had deteriorated rapidly.
Yeah.
He went from honestly just being really good and aging. And he was super, super vain, aging. He hated it. Like, if they put him on another medication, he was like, God damn it, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Like, and so he was good until, right. And if people are listening who've had this happen to them, they'll recognize what I'm saying. Until he started falling, right? There'd be a fall here and there'd be a fall there. And then we had to look into why is dad falling, congestive heart failure, getting weak, whatever. And then he had like a defibrillator, the thing, pacemaker combo,
Pacemaker.
and then he ended up in a facility. And so they called and said at 4:30 in the morning, he's gone. And I called my mom, or my mom called me, and I was like, well, let's go. And she was like, well, it's 4:30 in the morning. I'm like, let's go. And we had seen him earlier in the night. We knew he was on the decline because when they start giving you morphine is when you know it's close to the end, right? So we
Yep.
went, he was gone. She's not good in those moments, right?
Okay.
Like my dad died on September 13th of 2015, which was 12 days before their 50th wedding anniversary. So what does my mom say? Well, some people will do anything to get out of the 50th wedding anniversary. I was like, Jesus, mom. So like the nurse said to me, we need his ring off. We need his, my dad always wore a St. Christopher's medal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there were a couple of reasons for that. It was very, very dear to him. It was one of his friends died very young, and he was a pallbearer, and that was the gift from the mother for being a pallbearer. So he always wore it. So I, my mom looks at me and I was like, well, I'll do it, so like I had to like move his head, like take like the chain off. And then I tried to get his ring off, but his fingers were already like swelling, so
Yeah.
I couldn't. And then like I gave him a kiss, right?
Mhm.
And I think some people would recoil, right, from kissing a dead person. But I didn't
Oh,
think of it that way or even touching them,
no.
right? Because,
Yeah.
when the nurse said, like, we need his chain off, we need his ring. I mean, my mom was kind of like frozen and I was like, okay, she's not going to do it. But I'll tell you what, me doing that, it was a gift
Oh,
to
yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
It was.
You
So
have that
that's
memory forever. Yep.
absolutely. And so that's the sad part. But here's the funny thing about my dad. Okay. He was, in my opinion, one of the funniest people in the world, probably where I get it from. But like we'd be like up in Canada, like at the cottage, or even when I was growing up, like at the house. And I was one of those like, daughters, like daddy's little girl. Like I used to watch him shave, like I thought it was so interesting and stuff like that. And so I'd be up at the cottage and I'd walk by the bathroom and he'd be in there like combing his hair.
Mhm.
And he would stop and go, if I was any better looking, I'd be twins. And I'm like, or you'd say, Dad, how you doing? If I was any better, there'd be two of me. Like he was just always like, he was always so positive. And he was positive. He was comfortable in his own skin. Like
Mhm.
if somebody said something to my dad, like nowadays, like, oh, that person has anxiety or this, he'd be like, what the fuck you talking? What's anxiety? Like he didn't know those
Yeah.
terms. Like he didn't
Yeah.
like know that. And he loved everybody. He was so personable. He was friendly. He was like, he just loved like everything to do with everything.
Yeah.
Um, so that, so when he passed, and we knew it was going to happen, but like, left like it left like a large hole. It still does.
Mhm.
Because to me, he was irreplaceable. And so like his anniversary was just the other day, like I told you, and I sent you that picture. But so that's my grief. And like it's okay to hold that because like as Glennon Doyle says, that's my proof. That's mine.
Yeah.
So that's William Parker in a nutshell. Oh, there's so many other stories, but we won't go into them. So grief and loss, and like we kind of mentioned this before we actually gonna do this. When people think grief and loss, they automatically think of someone dying. And of
That's
course,
right. That's usually where it goes. Yeah.
that's the natural progression of things, and I
Right.
have friends who have lost their parents and, you know, um, I know people from my past, who lost children, which I don't know if I could come back from that one. And it's not even something I want to entertain the thought.
Yeah.
Um, but there's also grief and loss in regard to losing relationships.
Oh, sure.
And I often wonder, and this is a good question for you. I often wonder when people are going to say like, "Oh, that's an easy answer." Which is more difficult? The grief and loss over someone being gone because they passed
Oh.
away, or the grief
Hmm.
and loss over a relationship being over and the person being out of your life but still walking the earth?
But still walking the earth. Can you? I have lots to say about that. If you could give me 2 seconds, I just have to. I hear something. I'm right back.
The dogs. It's
Well,
the
it
dogs.
well, it
It's the
could
dog.
be.
It could be.
Could be. I just have to check here.
Maybe it's the Amazon delivery guy, which is always a happy time in my
Yeah, he
house
knows me
anyway.
too well.
I know. First name basis.
Yeah, look, I don't want to talk. It all started with COVID, so
Do
I
we
can't
have
buy
to
it honestly.
do we have to talk about shopping addictions
I
next?
don't. I don't want to. Actually, there's a
Because
whole interesting.
Amazon addiction.
Well, what is addiction and why does it? Whatever. So let's talk about that. So let's talk the. So there's two components of grief and loss, right? So there's just the logistics of it, which you can create a map. That's how we find the stages of grief. And, how do we find those things? It's by observation. And unfortunately, lots of people experience grief. So there's been plenty of people to observe over time. So we know that there's the 5 stages, which I'm embarrassed, I don't know the order, but it's anger, denial, acceptance, there's all these stages. But so
Can I
there's
just
this,
say one thing before you continue about the 5 stages of
yeah.
grief? Have you ever seen the video of the giraffe going through the 5 stages of grief?
Over what?
Because he stepped into quicksand.
Oh no.
Have you ever seen it?
You can have, no, I'm gonna look it up though. I'm writing it down
You
right
have to,
now.
because you will laugh so hard. Because
See,
in
we
the
should be sharing our screen
and it's
and
like a
showing.
clay. I wish we could. It's like claymation, so it's even better. But like in the anger stage, he's like, they shoot through all. In the anger one, he's like, "Well, this is just imperfect." You have to see. It's so. Anyway, side note. Anybody look up on YouTube giraffe
Actually, I'm gonna play it
five
right
stages.
now.
Are you
You
gonna play
ready?
it and like listen to it?
Yeah,
So funny.
we're gonna play it. Okay, because
So
I
we'll be
think
able
it's
to hear it.
appropriate. Yes, I'm
It's
gonna do it, and I think it's appropriate. So
it's doing it.
I
I think
know, I
just as
know,
long as you know how to get back.
I do. I've done
I've
this
got
before.
something on my screen that says Namaste 25 AOL. That's you. You got to close that shit down.
I know. I'm trying to. I don't want a code. I want you to go away. Oh my God.
Why
Let's
are they
just.
making you do that? Well, this is interesting because we're trying a whole new thing here, folks. Whole new thing.
Yeah,
Trailblazer.
do it a
You know,
different way because it's wanting me to sign in, which I don't want to do.
now I can understand that.
But I am excited to see this because now that I'm seeing the pictures for a second, I almost think maybe I have seen it. But oh, don't die. Okay,
It
I got it.
is.
Back.
And the giraffe is just so cute.
Okay.
Like he is.
Okay.
I'm so
Bear
excited
with
about it.
us, everybody.
Bear with us. Technical difficulties. Oh,
All right, you
perfect.
see it?
I
All
see it.
right. Oh, I got to do one more thing, which I didn't do because we want to hear it, right?
Right.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
Real time. Real time.
Here we
This is
go.
what makes it exciting. This makes it exciting. So,
Here we go. The
all
stages
right.
of grief given to us by.
Let's hope it works. Denial.
It's no big deal. It's probably not even quicksand. I'm gonna have a good laugh about this tonight with the guys. Well, this is just perfect. Stupid quicksand, stupid jungle. I want to bite someone in the face. Mother. Ah, that stupid jungle.
Like bargaining.
Not bargaining.
Are you there, God? It's me, Giraffe. Listen, if you would just give me a mulligan on this quicksand thing, I promise. No more peeing on your shorter creatures. What, did you get a deal?
Yes.
You know something? I'm cool with this. I bet heaven has all the tender leaves I can eat, and everyone gets their own Slurpee machine. Yeah, take me, sweet death. I await your loving embrace. What? I think I hit the bottom.
Oh no.
And watch. A mouse runs across his head. That is one of the funniest. Well, not to mention it also describes it really well, right? Like
It's
and
actually, you know what? That would be used wonderfully in a training. Yeah, that could be used for. I don't think. I wish I had. It's not the one I thought it was. That's awesome.
I live for
Yeah,
that thing. I do. I just so anyway. I'm so glad I shared it because now we got to watch
that's
it. And you
perfect.
figured out how to share your screen, which I can't figure out how
Yes.
to
Well,
do.
I should have told you I knew how to do that. I didn't know you didn't know how. But don't get crazy. Don't be sharing all the things. And I see
Well,
every week now, it'll be Ellen like, we didn't watch this video.
anything else? No. So, okay. So those are the 5
Okay, so
stages.
yep,
Go
those are
for
the
it.
5 stages. And the reason that we know that is because, and I've talked about this before, the only way we can gather emotional process information is by volumes of data and observation of people, right? So then you weed out all the outlying behaviors and then you condense the common ones and then you create whatever the stages of behavior. So one of the components of grief, and I do a lot of work with people with this because they feel guilty. Because say, for example, a grandparent dies and they don't cry, right? But 2 months later, they have to put their dog down and they're inconsolable. And they'll often come to me and feel like this horrible person. I didn't even cry. So, one of the components of grief, and this will just kind of segue right into relationships, is part of the level of grief that you experience is a direct correlation with how much time you spent with the thing you lost. Okay. So, say you saw your grandparents twice a year your entire life. And you enjoyed your time and you felt close to them at some level, but you're not going to, pick up your coffee in the morning and think of your grandparents because it's not like they sat across the table from you every morning.
Right. Right.
You're not going. You're gonna miss them during Christmas. You're gonna miss them during those key components when they were a presence in your life, maybe summer vacations, whatever. So it has to do with each trigger point of grief. So if it's someone or something, including a pet, that is there with you from the beginning of your day all the way to the end, every day, there's more capacity for grief there.
Okay, that makes sense. And isn't there a correlation between the amount of time, the length of the relationship, okay, which I mean, obviously parents would be, your entire life. The amount of the relationship, the period to actually not get over it, but the period to like get to a point of healing from the loss is somehow like 50% of the time of the relationship or something like that. Remember you said that thing about like, oh, you're in bed sick for 1 day and it takes you like 3 days
3 days to
to
recover.
fully recover.
Yeah, is there, if there is a documented correlation between the extent of the relationship and how long it takes to get over it, I do not know.
Mhm.
I do know that you might as well just uh, be very, very kind to yourself the first year. Everything is a first again without them. And maybe it's just a first Christmas and a first Easter, or maybe it's the first time you wake up. Maybe it's the first bath you take. Maybe it's the first cup of coffee every morning, like I said, so that's going to be very different than a birthday, a holiday, and the occasional phone call. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's always,
you
yeah.
yeah. So
Thinking
it's
back.
also yeah. So and things and then the longer the person is in your life, see, parents are real. It's a real interest. That's a different grieving, and losing mothers is a different grieving process than losing fathers.
Right.
Um, but I'm generalizing. So if we keep it in that capacity, then let's think of relationships. Relationships, if are in your life every single day, right? They're a part of your everyday routine. If it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, um, it's a part of your everyday. So take that and I mean, I look at my marriage right now. There isn't anything in my world that doesn't have her in it at some level, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And it's that saying, the capacity. You
Association with
got it.
so many things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the capacity for grief would be enormous because of the ratio to how many triggers of memories are you going to have in a day, you know?
Oh, I still have them now. Like, I mean, not bad, right? But like,
Mhm.
and not sad either. So now I like right now, the memories at this point in time, 9 years later, they're not sad, right?
Yep.
They're like,
Mhm.
you want to have them, right? Like when something catches you off guard or something. Listen, my dad's everywhere in my house, everywhere.
I believe
And
it.
like, and I did that on purpose. I painted my front door orange because it's his favorite color. Um, and because there were ways that I wanted to pay him tribute,
Mhm.
really. Um, so now they're not sad, right?
Yes.
I had a wedding this weekend, right? I was away for a wedding this
Yeah,
weekend.
yeah, yeah.
And I had an Airbnb with my friend Matt, who I've talked about it before, who's the guy who's in the
Uh-huh.
military. And
Mhm.
and he's gay and he joined the military and he was like 33, now he's 37. We're getting ready for this wedding and I was almost ready. And he walked by, he goes, "How's it going?" I go, "If I was any better looking, I'd be twins." He goes, "What the fuck is that?" That's what my dad used to say.
Yep.
And he
Yep.
was like, "You're like, that's a good one." I was like,
He's like, I'll
it just
chalk that one up.
it makes me laugh. I mean, like it's
Yep.
funny. Like I don't know if he thought of it
Yeah.
himself, but like, and if my mom sees this or my sisters, they will laugh. They know because they know like how often he's and he actually was an extremely handsome man. You saw the picture.
He is a good looking guy. Yeah.
He was a good looking guy.
Yep.
So but now they're happy, right? But in the beginning, like you said, when everything's a first, right?
Mhm.
And I almost feel a little bad because not bad, but like I lived in Buffalo. My parents lived in Buffalo, right? My parents are born and bred. My mom grew up on the east side. My dad grew up on the west side. Like,
Mom grew up on the east side. That's cool. Yep.
yeah, she grew up in Wyoming. Um, and and so, but my sisters lived away, right? Like
Okay.
as soon as they were like Elizabeth graduated from college and never actually came home until last year. And my other sister Elaine lives in Oregon. And so when everybody came for the funeral, even though their kids had been around my dad, it was like 2 weeks in the summer and maybe
Yep.
like Christmas here and there or Thanksgiving. And even though the kids loved him, like those kids loved him and they were just as shattered and they were just as, whatever, he was a little bit more of a fixture in my kids' lives
Sure.
than he was in the other grandchildren's lives.
Of course. Yeah.
Um, and I feel blessed for that. And my kids feel blessed for that. Like, they each have, and I just did this the other day. I had these I'm not going to totally get into it, but I have a picture of each of my kids with my dad when they were super young, because he used to like to put them on the riding lawnmower. And so they each had one, and I had them hanging in the kitchen, like in a 3-frame thing. Then I'd use 3-frame thing for something else, fucking blah, blah, blah. And so I separated the pictures and put them into singular frames just the other day.
Okay.
And I gave Peter his, and I gave Ian
Oh,
his.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they took a pause. They went like,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yep.
you have it, right?
Yeah.
But you have it. So the firsts.
The
Keep going.
first, yeah, I've got a friend actually who just lost his mom in April. And just when people, I've had a lot of deaths. And so not only do I have a personal experience, but then working with folks too, so
Oh,
I have been blessed to be by the side of many people who have passed. And So I have a good understanding of, that, and this, the funeral's over and all the hoopla's over, and then you're just kind of alone. And that's the hard part. So, I've just been checking in with him. And so what I said to him, I was just like, all right, here comes the change of seasons. Buckle down for the first breeze of fall. Yeah. And
the
he's like,
first
wait,
Thanksgiving, the first
he's like,
Christmas,
yeah,
the
he's
first,
like, and then so he's been texting me. He's like, oh my God, the boys' first day of school. I'm like, I know, I know. So it's not just when it's somebody that's integral in your life, and let your people know when they lose someone that close, that it's not just like the holidays. It's everything. It's the change of seasons. It's the phone call you didn't get to turn your clock back, or, whatever it is. So, and that's a good skill to take with you in life, to help people. Now, you can use the same concept when a relationship has been lost. It's a grief, it's a loss,
Mhm.
and um, it can absolutely be more painful for people, as opposed to someone who's passed away. I don't know if it's because that the person's moved on, Ellen, as much as it is because, again, the ratio to how much that was integrated into you as a person. And now your whole world changes. It's not just first, but your home changes, your routine changes, um, your status. Maybe you were married and now you're not, changes, so much of your identity changes too. And I am a huge advocate of going through the grief and loss steps when a relationship is lost, as thoroughly and thoughtfully as you do as when there's been somebody who's passed away.
It's an interesting thing that I thought of, or an interesting thing that actually happened. It was one of my kids. When the kids knew that we were separating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my youngest, who at the time, this was 2017, so he's 17 now. He was like 9, going on 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he said to me one time, like kind of like unprovoked, he said, I haven't seen you cry.
Oh,
And I said, well, that's because I did all of that already.
yeah.
Like you didn't, you like, so 5 stages of grief, you're not catching me at denial. You're not catching me at,
Depression.
depression, bargaining, you're catching me at acceptance.
So
That's
I
where you
think
catch me.
yes, absolutely. So in line with that, little update on Melon Guy. Speaking of which, he
I
got his
still
own
need to
apartment.
make shirts for us.
I know. He
Smell,
just moved into his own
smell.
apartment. Smell the melons. He just moved into his own apartment, and he had told me, I'm going to get in there. I'm going to take a couple of days off, and I'm just going to really let myself just feel the feels, and
Yeah,
and
your
because we talked a lot about,
space.
even though it was a really difficult relationship, let there be grief, right?
Yes, of
Um,
course.
and so that I talked to him the other day, and he told me about the place and what he's doing, and he goes, I didn't need to cry. I'm like, no, you didn't. You were mourning this a long time ago, and so he's like, so that's okay, right? He goes, I'm just ready to like put my place together, and I kind of want to date. And I said, yeah, that's okay. You didn't. He goes, but I don't want to not have the experience and then get stuck or repressed. So then I walked him through the steps he went through so he could actually visualize that he already did all that. I said, remember this? That was denial. Remember this? That was the depression. Remember? And he's like, oh, yeah, I already did all that.
Wait a
So
minute.
Melon
It's
Guy is
done.
doing good. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, this podcast might end up getting Melon Guy his next partner just because he's getting so much exposure.
I
Like
do. I
he
do.
sounds like
Yeah.
a great guy. And I'm so proud. I mean, like there is nothing like having when you come out of a relationship that fails for not,
Yeah.
I don't want to say fail. Sorry, no, ends. Not fail,
Mhm.
ends because every relationship teaches you something, and that's not a
All
failure.
that stuff in it.
Mm.
Sure.
Everything. But when you come out of a relationship that ends and it was a relationship that did not serve you,
Mhm.
romantic, we'll go romantic, a romantic relationship that did not serve you, and it ends and you come out of it, there's nothing like having your own space. Like
Mhm.
you want to talk about firsts, but in a good way,
Yeah. Yeah.
having your own space and being in it and sitting in it yourself and being like, I mean, I did it. Like, I was like, I never wanted the fucking glasses over in this cupboard and moved them over here. This is my place. I mean, like, you do that. You're like, I'm gonna rearrange the living room. Like, you
Mhm.
make it your own.
Mhm.
And that's why sometimes too, like when you make it your own and it's your space and whatever, you're very hesitant to give it up.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
because it's 100% yours,
Oh yeah.
or even
And a
share
lot of yeah, and a lot of people don't. They have, serious long-term relationships, but they keep their own space. A lot of people do that.
Well, I'm super happy for him. And you know what? That, like the 5 stages of grief and like, for him, and that's another thing for him to say, like, well, I didn't cry. Is that okay? Well, yeah, it's okay. It's
Hmm.
because you don't feel the need to.
Yeah.
Because somewhere along the line, you already exhausted that
Hmm.
emotion,
But I
whether it
was
was
trying to explain to
crying
him,
or
even though we might have a plan, okay, we're talking about divorce. Now we filed some paperwork. Now we put it on pause. Now we're talking to a financial advisor. Just because you're doing all that doesn't mean grief stops. You're creating a timeline that works for you, and that makes sense. You have to. But your process emotionally doesn't say, oh, I'll pause here while you're talking to the financial guy. It doesn't do that. So you will be trucking along trying to do the logistics, and you'll be going through that process simultaneously. Yeah.
they are concurrent. And I wanted to say too, um, in regard to, the premise or the beginning of this podcast, which was like domestic violence, domestic abuse survivors, or people or victims. I think some people would be like, how could someone feel grief or loss over a relationship that was, abusive, or, like when I told you about the case going on in France, right? The woman whose
Yeah.
husband for 10 years, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
she feels grief and loss.
Hmm.
She feels grief and loss, because she had a quote. If nobody, it's all over the news now. I mean, now it's everywhere, like, because
I know, I've seen it. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but she says that the last article I read, and I think it was Washington Post or whatever, their quote at the very end is like, I thought I knew him for 50. I
Yeah.
thought I knew this person for 50 years. She's
Yeah.
grieving.
Yeah.
She's
And
grieving.
let's talk about that for a second. It's so upsetting to me. Now this man, he'll go away and he will be, labeled as a villain, et cetera, et cetera. Um, However, this woman, if she expresses her loss and grief, she'll be vilified. She'll be like, how could you miss someone like that? And that's a terrible, terrible thing to do to someone. You know,
And this is her
she
life that she thought she had.
exactly, exactly,
And I
and
don't think she should be vilified for that, because
no,
it was her life for 50 years. And
yeah,
so she's probably missing the person she thought he was.
exactly. And that's the thing is that's why, um, even when I work with people, not in a situation like that, but when you lose people and you find out something prior to their death that changes the whole ball game, like maybe you found out they're not your father or they're not your mother or whatever, it does not change the grieving process, because remember, the longevity and the consistency of that person in your life is the key. So if you're handed some, you know crazy information right before the end, it's not going to affect, it's going to complicate. So I shouldn't say that, but it's
Oh,
not
sure.
going to be like, oh, grief is off. You weren't my father or you weren't my mother. No, it's not what
Doesn't
happens.
deserve, doesn't deserve grief. This doesn't deserve grief. No, it
Right.
absolutely does. And I think, like, I don't know. I've heard people say this. It's not that I read it somewhere, but people lose marriages, and because of cheating, right? And because of cheating, they don't work through it.
Yeah,
They separate. The spouse may even leave and go and marry the person they were cheating on the person with. I've
sure.
heard the expression that people have expressed, which is, it's the death of a dream, right? It's the death of a
Hmm.
dream. Like, I had this dream. I had this dream for our life. I had this dream, like, this was married, kids, we were moving forward, like, and it's the death of the dream,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
it's a dream that, a lot of people have, like, what's the funny saying that we say, like 2.5 kids and a white picket fence,
Oh yeah,
like the classic American dream, which as we know has
yeah.
evolved. Um, but that's how people refer to it. It's the death of a dream. It's a death of it's a death to them. It is a death to them.
Well, it's a death to the life that they knew. That's enough. That
Yes.
is, you can't. That's undeniable. You can't say that that isn't happening. And I think that what I wish I didn't still see so much of is this grief shaming, where people are taken to task. You know, I didn't grieve too much, or I grieved too much. I'm still crying about my cat, and I didn't cry enough about my grandmother. I still haven't cried. So, it's just like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Or
All these rules.
or people, there are no rules, or people in their life saying, "Oh my God, time to get over it. Time to get
That's what
over
I
it.
mean.
What's wrong with you?" I've talked with friends or family members or whatever about there's no timeline for how long you're going to feel this way about someone who passes away, about a relationship that's over. I mean, there are people, it takes them years and years to get to where closure is such a, I'm sick of the word closure.
Oh no, they get to
I
the other
mean,
side of it. Yeah.
it's just getting to the other side. It's not so much like closure. It is getting yourself to a point where you can look at it not objectively, but
So you know what I call it? The moment you are starting to look reflectively, that's when I believe you can start to say you're on the other side of it. When you're still actively grieving, it immediately pulls you into the moment. Um, and
when
you
it's in
can't,
your
you're
rear
stuck
view
in it.
mirror, right?
Yes. When you're like, oh, I remember when my mom did that. I wonder why she did that. I can't ask her. Let me see if I can figure it out. Reflective, as opposed to, oh my God, she's not here. I can't ask her. And then the grief.
Because some things, well, a lot of things, like when you go through life and a lot of losses that you have, you're always going to carry them with you.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't have to be in a bad way, but if these people were important enough to you, parent, grandparent, sibling, aunt, uncle, boyfriend, girlfriend, who the hell knows,
Whatever.
if they were important enough to you in your life that you felt grief and loss when they were out of your life for whatever reason,
Yeah.
then they're always going to be with you in some way. And there are people who are like, you know, I say people, but I mean you see it all the time. They're like, ever think about that again? Don't ever think about that again. It's over, it's done. But you can think about it in a constructive, reflective manner and get to a point almost where you say, you know
Well,
what?
people do
I've
that because,
I have
yeah.
appreciation that this person was in my life, and I now know why this person was in my life, and that
Well,
goes beyond the parenting thing. But
yeah,
that
it,
happens,
it
right? You
does. And
can.
a lot of people say, well, don't talk about that. Don't talk about that. And it's really, they're projecting their own process. Um,
Well, they
but
don't want you to. Well, sometimes people are like, don't talk about it because they think you're going to regress. No, I think you need to talk about it.
do, it is, there's really nothing out there to this day, that the solution has been don't talk about it. I can say that to anything. I've not seen that work. Um,
When has push it under the rug ever worked for anybody? Because guess
well, I
what?
mean,
It's still under the rug. It didn't
yeah,
go
it's,
anywhere. It's going to come out and
yeah.
scare you at some point in time. So don't push it under the rug because it still exists. And if it's not going to exist right in front of you and you're not going to address it, then it's going to pop up from fucking behind you and scare the shit out of you at some
It
point when you
does.
least expect it.
And it's weird because it'll ooze out like toxin and it'll show up in areas that you don't expect it. Like, why are you furious every time you see a velvet couch? You're like, I don't, would you, it's disgusting. I don't want it in my face. And it turns out it goes way back to whatever with your ex, and you had this massive fight on a velvet couch and, at a Goodwill over who was going to, and now you've created a trigger because you never looked at it. Unnecessary trigger. Yeah.
Yeah, because you didn't deal with it. Or, like, oh, you're in the grocery store and there's a sale on, Italian plums, and you all of a sudden you dissolve into weeping mess because you guys really loved Italian
Analogies.
plum.
Let's get more specific. And then you see one Italian plum and it's got one little bruise on it. And you're like, that's the one. That's the one. So when you see the Italian plum with the bruise on the right side and then you eat it here and you get, yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Like, I mean, it's
You
weird
know.
shit like that that does it to people.
Yeah.
And then they wonder
Well,
all of a sudden why they're paralyzed and they were going along their day just fine. And all of a sudden they're paralyzed. And it's like because
yeah.
you
We're
didn't look at
wired
it.
that way too. We're sensory
Yeah.
beings. So it's to our advantage. We need our sense of smell and sight and everything to let us know when good things are happening, when bad things are happening. I mean, you look at dogs, the minute they see a wound on another dog, they go right to smell it. You know why they do that?
Why?
They can tell whether something's infected
Really?
and they'll start doing the licking and try to, yeah.
And try to
So,
fix it?
yeah, they'll try to fix it unless it's no good and then,
Then they'll walk
survival.
away. Lost cause. Come
They're
over
like,
here.
well, you're already start the grieving process.
Where's
Um,
the cue the giraffe video?
Some little chihuahuas in the background playing taps.
Tiny, tiny little bugle.
Okay.
Oh my God, that was funny. No, but so, okay, so here's a question for you.
Mhm.
Grief and loss in regard to either the death of a loved one
Mhm.
or the ending of a relationship.
Mhm.
People deal in different ways, right?
Mhm.
I mean, some people who lose a parent literally can't deal with it and completely ignore it and shove it away and don't like, or same with relationships. And everyone deals differently. What do you think are I mean, you must see this a lot. What do you think or you found to be
The
the most
best way?
productive, successful way to
I
deal with
got
it?
it. I mean, I've always known what it was clinically, but I actually witnessed it. And one of my best friends lost her mom, and I
Okay.
watched her do it. She grieved through the entire process. It was, Katie, I can't stop crying. I'm worthless. I can't help my family. I'm like, no, this is perfect. You know, they're going to have to deal with theirs later. They can't get it out right now. And she did it through the whole process. And she did it with her mom. She did it at home. She did it with her friends. She just was let herself be a blubbering mess at times and um, kind of in disbelief at times. She was in it in the moment. She was going through all the stages within a period of a few months while her mom was, towards the end. And when it came, she was completely at that point of acceptance and was able to accept and embrace her mother's transition um, into the other part of the world. And personally, I always knew that, but I got to witness it, not only witness it, but from witness it in somebody I love very much. And it was pretty amazing. I was like, that's about it. That's the way you do it.
Yeah, and I do sometimes think in regard to death, and maybe
Mhm.
also in regard to relationships, um, people who are very afraid of it and who are not accepting of it, um, don't like to think it's going to happen. Like I think I made the statement once before that I don't think it's so much that people are afraid of dying. I think it's afraid of how they're going to die, right? Like we all know we're going to die, everyone. Like
Pain.
this is
It's pain.
absolute, right?
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
I think people, but like my dad, I don't know if he knew he was going to die or not, honestly. Like, I don't know if he was even thinking about it. I mean, like congestive heart failure, you start to lose the amount of oxygen that's going to your brain, right? And so you're not thinking 100% coherently. I remember one time I used to visit him every day. And when I was in town, because I was like traveling for work, but I remember one day I went in there and I was like, hey, Dad. He was like, why aren't you at bowling practice? And I was like, well, I thought I'd swing by and see
Yes.
you. Okay. He was taught because when I was 10, I was
Yeah.
on a bowling league. And he was like, I think it's incredibly irresponsible that you are not at bowling practice. I think that I was like, holy fuck, like he wants me to leave. But like, I felt bad, but then I was like, no, he's getting agitated. He's like, he thinks I'm shirking my responsibility. And so like I walked out and said to the nurse, well, I'm gonna go because I'm supposed to be at bowling practice. I'm like, and he was just like, oh God damn it. But like I I didn't sit there and go, no, dad, no, dad. I was like, no, I played along with it. I'm like, I know he's going. I know he's going. And I'm agitating him more because he's seeing me as a 10-year-old
Mm-hmm.
that he's telling to go fulfill my obligations, my responsibility to my team.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm not gonna piss him off anymore. Right.
Yeah.
And that visit only ended up being 20 minutes, which made me feel guilty. But I was like, I'm not going to sit here and say, Dad, you're wrong. Dad, no, it's, 2015. No,
Yeah.
no. Like you have to like kind of, accept it. But like there are people that they don't really accept that. They don't really think it's going to happen. They don't really like, I will use an example. It's a very personal example of somebody that I know in my life, and I'm not going to name them, who I talk to quite regularly and is amazed at the fact that people of her own age aren't doing well when they're in their late 80s and early 90s.
Mm.
And I always say, how did you think this was going to go? Like, you're not trying to be insensitive, but it's like,
No, but
that people don't normally, sometimes people don't live into their 90s.
mhm.
Yes, at some point they're going to have to be in an assisted facility. I mean, like, there are people who
Yeah,
don't want to think about it. Because if they think about it, they're like, that's going to be me. That's going to be me.
of course. And then it is
Yeah, it
that
is going to
I
be you.
can't. Yeah, yeah. I
And those
mean,
people are
it's
difficult to talk to, right? They're difficult
well,
to
and they
you
shut their
can't
world
really
down
talk
more
to.
and more because then
Yes.
any sort of decline you're experiencing now becomes related to your lack of independence and everything. So then you just deny everything, you know?
Oh, lack of independence. But like I don't know. I mean, you're the professional. I don't know what to say to someone or counsel someone who won't let a relationship go, who won't let the death of a loved one go, who won't,
Yeah,
because I really think that has more to do with them inside here than
yeah,
it does with the person being gone,
yep, it
right?
does. And there's lots of different layers to that, you know. So I mean, when if it's a spouse, right? You're not only breaking up and grieving the relationship, you're grieving the person too.
Mhm.
Um, if you lose both your parents and all of a sudden there's this orphan component that everybody experiences, and they feel like they're alone in, or you're no longer a child, you're not a child of anyone, you know, people, then that's a different kind of grief, so these different tiers of grief in one loss is really important to look at too. I mean, for people that, oh my goodness, lose children at childbirth and all this anticipation, and now they're not a mother or they're not a father and they were supposed to be, and I mean, there's all these different things, roles change, and so it's important to look at what's going on and then to dissect and break down the tiers of grieving. Has it changed who you are? Has it changed like your lifestyle? Has it changed the status of your relationship, your role as a human being? Does it redefine that? And the more of those things that are going on, um, again, the more layered it is and the more healing that needs to be done, you know?
There is so much to grief and loss. There really is. And sometimes it's not that people don't, I don't know how to like, so like before I had my oldest son, Peter, who's 21, right? I had two miscarriages before I had Peter.
Mm.
And one, you know, miscarriages I are fairly common. They actually are fairly common. Well, one is fairly common, and it could be for a number of different um reasons. It could be a number of different reasons, and
On a different
nobody
reasons.
in the
Yeah.
medical world would ever make you feel bad about it. But
Yeah.
two, that's when they have to start saying, okay. And it was two at the exact same part of the term, right? It was 2 at 13 weeks,
Oh,
both times.
okay.
So then they have to look into stuff. And because this is their business and this is what they do in their career, they know exactly what it was, right? It was like a luteal phase defect, whatever that was. So then, but those 2 miscarriages, which came within like, Peter was born in January 2003. So I had 1 in 2001, 1 in 2002, right? And then they figured out it was wrong, knew what we had to do the next time I conceived. I don't, it's not that, it's not that I don't often think about them,
Mhm.
but it's like sometimes I do think like, what would those kids have been like?
Mm. Yeah.
Like it's an and I don't, and like a lot of people actually don't like that. Those are considered kind of early term miscarriages. Like some people have miscarried like way later, but it's still
But
like a
that doesn't mean you
loss.
don't think about, of course it is. And
Yeah.
what I was going to say is, again, the lack of grief and loss understanding around miscarriages is, I all that grief shaming. Well, it didn't really carry to term, or I mean,
Try
nobody
again.
gets to say that.
Try again. Right. Or
Yeah.
what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Or is it something with him? Is it, but no, whenever it's a miscarriage, they always say to the woman, like, well, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Were you not taking care of yourself?
Oh, there's that
That's a
too.
good one. Were you not taking care of yourself? Were you not? And that has absolutely nothing to do with it because some pregnancies end themselves. And
They
there's
do.
a whole host of reasons why. It
That's
is your,
actually fascinating what the
it
body,
is
and it happens in
fascinating.
the animal world too. It's like, nope, you're not going to
Yes,
carry.
it
And we
does.
know why. But yeah,
And
yeah.
your body is taking care of something that that it recognizes as not viable. That is what is happening. So, but like the grief and loss in that, which a lot of people can't understand. And I'm not saying that people who have had it, have had it happen to them understand it. There is so much like grief shaming about that. But when you say like so many layers of guilt, there are so many layers of guilt and like or of grief. Like when you hear about someone who's like they had to put their pet down. Like I had to put my big old yellow lab down. He was 12. There's a lot of people would be like, yeah, so what? It's a dog, right?
I know. Yeah, and
And
that's why
I'm
I think
like,
it's
no, it was
also it's
Bo the super
family.
dog. Or
Yeah,
like,
I
you
mean,
know,
yeah,
it's
yeah, and
different, like, and people's levels of empathy and people's levels of whatever
also
also
taking
shows
into
you how they'll
taking
handle
in for sure, and like using that correlation of lifetime. So we just had to put down our oldest cat a couple months ago. She was 16 and she had a wonderful life and she had no health issues until she did. And then it was liver, it was kidneys, which is what happens to cats. Now,
right.
Liz and I were obviously upset. I'm the one that always does. I always take them. So it's just how we've always done it. I'm the one everybody says goodbye. But it wasn't, and I think maybe next time we should talk about the difference between shocking losses, like I'm having this wonderful marriage, and then all of a sudden my husband's a pedophile and I didn't know, or like the woman that you've been talking about, or
Giselle.
because I think we don't identify it correctly. It's not that, oh, at least she lived a good long life. That should not be synonymous with therefore your grief shouldn't be so bad. And I think we that needs to be clarified. I mean, for my kids, that cat was
Right.
in their lives their whole life. I mean,
Like you
so
said, the
yeah,
extent of the relationship.
they look at pictures of, she's 16, so that Jack is 16. He was a baby when we got, so he sees pictures of himself with that kitty his whole life, and Em the same since she was 10 years old. So for them, that experience, again, we've only got 16 years of life, and you were in all of them, so
Right.
that's going to be a different layer of grief than, not that, of course, we weren't sad to lose her, but Liz and I were more concerned about the kids. They just had more in it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I understand that because when I had to put my yellow lab down, Bo, um, with labs, it is their hips and their legs go, right? Like,
Yep.
and he was a big boy. And so when I had him put down and it was Laps of Love who comes to your
Yep.
house.
They're great.
I
Mm-hmm.
100% endorse them.
Mm-hmm.
Came to the house and my one son could be right next to her.
Yeah.
My other son could be nowhere near it and left
Yep.
the house. And my youngest son stood in the kitchen and watched and just like couldn't. So everybody handles it.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
saw it
when
with all of them.
yeah,
Everybody
it's
handled it in a
amazing.
different way.
Yeah. So my son he'll go head first into grief and he'll take it in and my daughter, whenever it's time to put a critter down, I'll call her, say, honey, now that she's not living with us, I'll say, honey, you wanna come say goodbye? Nope. I said, okay, baby, I'm gonna check with you one more time just to make sure. And then I'll text her or something and and that's just the way she is. She can't do it. So, but she makes amends with it. She does fine on her own.
And we shouldn't, and that's another thing that I kind of wanted to address before we kind of wrap up.
Mhm.
And we shouldn't impose how we handle it on other people.
Oh goodness, no. Oh,
You know
that
what I
can cause
mean?
so
Like
much damage.
there are people like when they called and said that my dad was gone, and I said to mom, okay, I'm coming over and picking you up. And she was like, well, I don't really think we need to go. And I said, because this is me, and you know how I can be. It was also 4:30 in the fucking morning. But I was like, would you forgive yourself if you didn't go? And then you missed that opportunity.
Yeah.
But that's just how I feel about it. And I
What was the
actually
question though?
But I
Well, you
regret
just
saying
asked
that
her.
to her.
Did you?
I do. I
Yeah,
regret
okay.
saying that to her because I shouldn't have put that on her. If she didn't want to go and it was okay for her to just remember him how he was and not see him gone,
Well,
I
did you
should have.
do it with like, did you try to guilt her into it or something?
No, no, no.
Oh,
I just was
okay.
like, I just said, because to me it was automatic. I'm like, okay, I'm coming over. And she was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, we have to go like see. I mean, like that is how I felt. And she was like, well, I don't really, but I did say, I'm like, because I was thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, I've known her my entire life. I was thinking ahead and I was like, what, how would you feel if you didn't? And
Well,
that's
that's
when she
not a
was
bad thing
like,
to.
okay. She's like, okay.
But how do you know? So yeah, I don't think that. I think you
I know, I
actually
feel like
gave
kind of
her
a
that.
jerk for saying that.
No, I mean, no different than me letting you know my daughter know I want to check with you because it's not you're not having this opportunity again. It's not something. So for I don't think that was. I think that was a good check-in for your mom. I think because I don't think at any point if she had said, you know what, I really can't go, you would have been like, yes, you need to,
I still would have gone either way. I mean, I think I would have said to her,
Mhm.
well, I'm going either way. Right. So
Yeah.
if you change your mind, I'll come back and get you and drive. I'm like, but I'm
Yeah,
going
sure.
either way.
But I'm going either way. Yeah.
It wasn't even a thought to me. Like I didn't, like
Mhm.
it just, that was something that, and I'm not saying like I'm fucking superwoman. I'm just saying like I wanted to see him one more time,
No, it's just who you are. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah, I
know?
think that, so I have a lot of other thoughts kind of brewing
Mhm.
in my head about this. And I do want to tell you
Take
about
notes.
um I think grief and loss therapy in so many ways is so efficient and can be plugged into so many different areas that anybody who's going in to be a therapist or anything, if you can get, all kinds of knowledge on different ways to process grief and loss, I will tell you this, you'll never not use it.
Well, because it applies to so much too. Like we've obviously focused on people. What about losing a job? What about losing? I mean, like there are people who are highly attached to their jobs and they lose them and they're devastated.
And then that's it. Well, I'll
They're
tell you next
devastated.
time, but I'll tell you an interesting client story. So I think I had told with you, for years I did work with really high end mentally ill folks too. So my focus was more symptom management than behavior adaptation and stuff. And I had a young guy that early onset schizophrenic. Wouldn't take his medication, just lots of battles with that. And he was pretty good when he was on his meds. But the concept was what we finally got down to is he had his first hallucination. Everybody thought it was an imaginary friend, but it started very, very young. And he called him Sarge, and he was there his whole life. So to take the medication meant not only the bad things went away, but Sarge went away too. So next time we'll talk about how I used grief and loss therapy techniques to help him mourn that hallucination and move forward.
He loved Sarge.
You did, yeah.
Okay, and I'll end. And okay, we're gonna end, but I'm gonna end with this too because this was interesting. I was looking for a new show to watch on Prime, on Amazon Prime. Okay, and I'm gonna give you this one, Martin Moon. Okay, I think it's Martin Moon. It's about a little Irish boy. Okay, whose imaginary friend is a 38-year-old man, and it's hilarious. So talk about a good. I watched the 2 first episodes, but that just reminded me that he's like 9. He's 9 and his imaginary friend's 38.
38-year-old man.
And he's an Irish actor who's been in other stuff. He actually wrote the series.
Okay.
You got to watch
what?
it.
Maine Moon?
Martin Moon. Because the kid's name is Martin Moon, right?
Well, I think
and he's
Maine Moon is a Chinese restaurant down the street.
He's like the youngest child of this Irish family. He's got like 4 older sisters who are horrible to him. And that's why he has this imaginary friend who's 38. Just in case anybody wants, like, I think pretty sure it's Martin Moon. My son was watching. And well, first of all, I love Irish accents. So just listening to it is like the best of all time. But like, gotta watch it. Just the imaginary, because that's
okay. I wrote it down, but I was just thinking, thank you for sharing the giraffe. I like that very much. And then look I have zebras on my shirt today. It's an African. Yeah.
Well, now I'm going to look up the symbolic significance of zebras.
Oh.
You ever look up those things?
I do all the time, but I don't remember zebras.
Have you seen a lot of dragonflies this summer by any chance?
No. Is that your daddy's critter?
No, because I've seen dragonflies all over the place. And you know what dragonflies symbolize?
I never remember, but I should. Yes.
Positive change, and turning the page and new chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're always hovering in my driveway and in my backyard.
Well, they're talking to you then. So zebras.
I'm going to look up zebras.
I got it right here. Are about valuing the differences in others, to celebrate the rich tapestry of cultures, and to recognize the interconnectedness of all beings.
Way to go, zebra.
I think I'm just going to become a zebra.
There you go. We'll have to look up giraffes too, in honor of giraffe.
I know, right? We pulled in a lot of African critters today. Oh, and the chihuahuas. Don't forget the chihuahua.
The one that plays the bugle, not the other.
That's right. Playing taps. My wife took my truck today because she had to haul stuff around. She's pulling it in. I don't want to look. Okay, goodbye.
She backing in it? Okay, good luck. Good luck.
My truck. I don't want to grieve my truck. Goodbye.
Godspeed.
Next time we have a guest. So exciting. Goodbye.
That's right. All right, bye.
Bye.